Hello, kia ora, g'day, I'm Philip Duncan from Weather Watch TV on YouTube with your Australia-only forecast right through until Tuesday of next week. And thunderstorms and rain and showers continue around the southeast of Australia. A southerly change coming through into South Australia, windy westerlies blowing through parts of New South Wales. The thunderstorms that you see here around Queensland and New South Wales, a lot of those will spark back up again potentially today once the sun comes up, but many of them falling apart as they moved eastwards overnight early this morning as it runs into the Great Dividing Range. But some of that rain spilling over into the Sydney area and surrounds. Elsewhere, not a lot to talk about, pretty quiet, but there are still a few lingering thunderstorms in that convergence line going right up to the Northern Territory. Here's a closer view of the rain and thunderstorms right over the top of Dubbo this morning, pushing out to sea as those thunderstorms fall apart to some degree as they come over the Great Dividing Range. Certainly some wet weather pushing in. The low itself is spiralling along, just exiting South Australia when we recorded this, and it will track quite quickly over New South Wales across Wednesday and then exits out to sea tomorrow. Southerly change here, you can see it pushing the wet weather north of Adelaide going further inland as the low itself spirals along here producing more thunderstorms. So a few moving parts to it all. Here is how it looks as we go into this evening. The low still over the top of New South Wales, tracking along eastwards towards the sea with warm, windy westerlies and northwesterlies ahead of it, especially warm around parts of Queensland. But the southerly change behind it, really quite powerful between the incoming high for Western Australia and the outgoing low for Eastern Australia. You can see it here between the two, just sucking up that southerly going right up north of Alice Springs. So temperatures in the southern half of Australia are down, whereas in the northern half, fairly mild still. Windy weather will pick up more so overnight tonight and into the Thursday morning. Now this is still messy because the low itself is not that major while it's over land. Once it comes out to sea, said this yesterday, it's like when you pull the plug out of the bath and it all spins very quickly. So this is going to deepen very fast. But unlike a bath where you pull the plug, this doesn't have a perfect sinkhole. So it's messy and stretched out. And that shape of it here, all these sort of weird center to it, means that the winds are kind of messy around it. But it does look as though they're going to power up during the morning along coastal parts of New South Wales. Whether these damaging winds that are just offshore will actually brush Sydney or not, it's a little hard to work out because at the same time as those winds are ramping up, the low is starting to move away. So it's, as I said yesterday, one step forward, one step backwards as far as trying to lock in this part of Australia. Now let's jump forward a few more hours, 10 o'clock in the morning, and you can see the worst of those winds north of Sydney now, coming up around Forster, Port Macquarie, and inland areas around the Great Dividing Range, getting some gusts also up around 100 kilometres an hour here and there. So most of that wind is pushing out to sea. Talk about Lord Howe in a second. Let's go to Thursday's setup. This is into the afternoon now. So the low very quickly zipping off towards New Zealand with that stretched out centre to it. The severe weather box covers both strong winds that could be briefly damaging, for a couple of hours might be damaging in some coastal areas, but there's also the heavy rain coming through. Between the ACT and the coastal side of New South Wales, up to 100 millimetres of rain could be falling there between now and then, so that's worth monitoring. And still some showers and maybe some thunderstorms left around New South Wales, briefly coming into Queensland. Further south, plenty of showers off the sea, so colder weather coming through for you. The polar air that was around South Australia moves over and Tasmania gets that on Thursday. And before we finish with Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, it is now Lord Howe Island's turn to get the southerly change with showers, maybe a few more thunderstorms. Could be thunderstorms all around the centre of this low pressure zone as it moves to New Zealand, and windy for Norfolk Island. Hopefully not too problematic though. The red shading means it's only gusting to gale force, and I say only because gale force is when it starts to get problematic. So if it's only just getting to that, hopefully not too many issues around Norfolk Island. Friday, okay, a couple of things to talk about. I've been asked about the AFL finals. I'm not a very sporty guy, so thanks for reminding me. So that's I believe it's in Adelaide on Friday. So what you're seeing is light winds coming through there with still a couple of showers, maybe, but I think it's looking mainly dry, especially as you go through the day. Showers carry on into Victoria with south to southwesterlies, not very much in the way of precipitation. And around Tasmania, the polar line drops south of you, so your temperature goes up a degree or so. Still showery though over around the west coast. Pretty dry in many other places, but going up to the Kimberley and around to the top end, maybe a few thunderstorms and showers there coming in for you as we go through the later part of Friday. Let's go to Saturday. High pressure returns to New South Wales and the ACT. Light winds, drier skies for most of you. A few lingering showers in the northern rivers and also coming up into Queensland a little bit on the coastal side of things. Further northwards though, up to around the far north of Queensland, a small area of low pressure is just spiraling around there. It's not doing much, but between that weak low and the stronger high to the south, you've got a squash zone of windy easterlies or northeasterlies that will push in across the Northern Territory and then comes into Western Australia where there is the next cold front. And this next cold front comes through with showers and windy westerlies picking up on Saturday. Probably nothing too major in there, but you might get an isolated thunderstorm. It's Sunday where it might get a bit more energetic though. There is the polar line getting very close. That means colder air is spilling in and that will produce more downpours, squally showers, strong winds here and there, and also some gusty winds ahead of it with these nor'westers that go from inland parts of South Australia all the way down to Tassie and parts of Victoria. Not so much wind or windy around New South Wales and the ACT, a general nor'west flow for many of you. And in Queensland, you can see more of those tropical showers coming through. It's not overly hot and tropical, but I mean, it's warm, but for you guys, but it's the red line is still kind of up north of the Queensland area. It's dropping down a wee bit for parts of the top end and the Kimberley, but it's nothing too big just yet. We're monitoring that because as we get closer to summer, that red line is going to drop southwards further. Now let's go to Sunday. I said windy weather was returning to Western Australia. This is it here. The red shading is kind of getting up to the purple shading, which is gale force gusts, 60, 70 k's an hour, maybe even 80 kilometres an hour here and there. Windiest weather is from Albany around to Perth, but as you can see, gusty conditions go up even north of Geraldton. Monday afternoon, showers and maybe a few thunderstorms as that cold weather pushes into South Australia. But I said this yesterday, the polar airflow and that cold front, most of it is south of Australia. So it's just sort of brushing along the southern coastlines, and that's what you're seeing here, a line of wet weather that's moving sideways along. But with the southwesterly on Monday, that could bring in some potential downpours and thunderstorms coming into South Australia. Yet again, another chance of wet weather. Windy westerlies for Victoria, windy nor'westers for Tassie, and as you come into New South Wales, the ACT, those northwesterly winds pick up. Showers generally clear much of Queensland, but coastal areas could still have a few clouds, maybe a shower, but nothing much to talk about really. We've still got some further windy weather here as we go into Monday afternoon. Now it's moving further eastwards, but still windy around Esperance, parts of Western Australia and the coastal areas. Could be getting gusts there of 70 or 80 kilometres an hour. It's not all day long, it's mostly with showers passing through, but gusty weather even comes into South Australia, Victoria through the hills and the ranges. We could be seeing 90 to 100 kilometre an hour gusts, and Tasmania as well. Being this far out, it could still change a wee bit. So generally speaking, you've got gusty conditions coming through and continuing on into Monday of next week and into Monday night as those windy conditions track eastwards, coming into parts of New South Wales, the ACT, strong winds through the Victoria Alps and around parts of Tassie. You're also getting strong winds at the same time that these gusty northwesterlies are moving into Tasmania. It's also starting to break apart. So hopefully not too problematic. This is all kind of borderline for being problematic, but it's right up there. It is spring and it's changeable, and this is what we get. So the final map we've got here is for Tuesday, highlighting Tasmania because of strong winds and perhaps some heavy thunderstorms, and the polar line comes back up again, which means wintry conditions back again around Tasmania. Could be a dusting of snow high up, and potentially, around parts of Victoria. Could be some high elevation snow dropping down a wee bit going through Tuesday, but we've got to lock this in as it's still a few days out, and the shape of that high right over the top of South Australia makes all the difference about what goes on in the southeast here. But generally next week kicks off more spring-like weather, but also an uptick in high pressure, meaning there's still large dry areas around, and we're still not really seeing a big change to the weather pattern at the top of Australia, although some weak areas of low pressure starting to bubble up. We'll have to track that over the coming weeks. That is all from me for today. Catch you again tomorrow, Thursday, with our next Australia update.